The laboratory was swallowed in shadows, save for the harsh, clinical light of the wall-mounted projection. Dr. Aris stood inches from the screen, his finger tracing the intricate, web-like structure of a human retinal scan. He tapped the center, the fovea, where visual acuity should be at its absolute peak. "Look here," he commanded, his voice cutting through the hum. The assistant stepped forward, squinting at the magnified image. Aris pointed to the void where the S-cones should have been clustered. They were virtually absent in this high-acuity zone. He circled the area with a laser pointer, the red dot dancing over the empty space. "We are looking at a fundamental flaw in our own architecture," Aris muttered, his eyes never leaving the scan. He turned to the assistant, his expression tight with intensity. "The S-cones, the very receptors responsible for detecting blue, are missing." He stepped back, letting the projection wash over the room. "We are missing the pieces to a puzzle we did not even know we were playing." Aris tapped the screen again, dragging a digital slider across the projection. The image shifted, highlighting the mere 2% of blue-sensitive receptors scattered across the retina. "If these cones are so sparse, why does the sky not look like a washed-out gray?" he asked, pacing toward the workbench. He grabbed a handheld color calibrator and held it up to the assistant. "Look at this display. The blue is vibrant, piercing, and sharp. It hits the eye with the same weight as red or green." He set the device down with a sharp click against the metal table. Biology dictates that signal strength should correspond to receptor density. Here, the math fails. He leaned into the light, his face etched with the weight of the realization. This is not a passive reception of light. It is a massive, hidden amplification system. Our brains are working overtime, inflating a weak signal into a dominant experience. The system is burning energy to hide the poverty of our own hardware, forcing a vivid reality out of a biological void. Aris strode to the whiteboard, his marker squeaking against the surface as he sketched the opponent process theory. He drew a jagged line, separating the spectrum into distinct channels. "Focus here," he commanded, circling the blue-yellow channel with aggressive, overlapping strokes. He grabbed the assistant's hand and forced a finger onto the center of the circle. "Feel the weight of that imbalance." The brain pits these few sparse S-cones against the combined crushing power of 98% of our other receptors. He stepped back, the diagram looking like a chaotic map of a siege. It is a lopsided war. Every second, the brain is forced to engage in constant, high-stakes neural filtering to keep the blue signal from being drowned out by the sheer volume of red and green data. He tapped the board until the marker tip flattened. The brain is not just observing, it is actively suppressing a rebellion of incoming light. It treats the blue-yellow channel as a front line. He looked at the assistant, his eyes sharp. "Imagine the exhaustion of a system that must fight its own hardware. We are living in a state of perpetual, silent neural combat." Aris turned away from the whiteboard, his movements abrupt. He reached into a glass case and pulled out a translucent, spherical model of the human eye. He held it up, catching the overhead light so the lens component cast a faint, amber-tinted shadow onto the desk. "We have been discussing the brain, but the defense starts here," he said, tapping the plastic lens with his fingernail. "This is not just a focusing tool. It is a biological shield." He rotated the model, showing how the lens sat directly in the path of incoming light. It acts as a permanent barrier, absorbing high-energy blue wavelengths before they ever reach the retina. It is a sacrifice of clarity for the sake of survival. He moved the model closer to the assistant, forcing them to look through the curved, slightly yellowed material. Without this filter, the retina would be scorched. The eye is constantly engaged in a struggle to prevent burnout from the very light we claim to see. He placed the model down with a heavy thud, his expression hardening. The system is fragile. We are walking around with a built-in sacrificial barrier. If that shield falters, the consequences are not just visual, they are catastrophic. Aris leaned over the desk, his voice dropping to a low, clinical register. "Consider the patient who undergoes cataract surgery. The natural, amber-tinted lens is removed, and in its place, we insert a clear, synthetic substitute." He gestured sharply, as if cutting the air. The barrier is gone. The shield is broken. He paced the length of the lab, his footsteps rhythmic and heavy. Within minutes of waking, these patients report a terrifying phenomenon: cyanopsia. The world does not just brighten, it floods with a shocking electric blue. He stopped, staring at the assistant, his eyes wide. They describe white walls turning into glowing sapphire sheets. The sky becomes an aggressive, pulsating neon. It is not a subtle shift, it is an invasion. He tapped his own temple. The brain was never designed to process this spectrum raw. He grabbed the edge of the table, knuckles white. They are not seeing the world more clearly. They are seeing the raw, unfiltered static that the eye has been protecting them from since birth. It is a sensory overload that proves one thing. Our reality is a curated, filtered construct, and the blue we see is only a fraction of what is truly there. Aris turned his back on the surgical discussion, moving toward the far wall of the laboratory. He reached for a shelf that had clearly been neglected for years. His fingers brushed away a thick layer of gray grit before he pulled out a heavy, leather-bound journal. The spine creaked as he laid it flat on the desk, the sound sharp in the quiet room. He flipped through pages brittle with age, his movements deliberate and slow. If the eye is a shield, then what is it guarding us against? He muttered, more to the paper than to his assistant. He stopped at a page marked by a jagged, hand-drawn diagram. It showed a simple, rounded stone, but around its edges, a faint, violet-hued aura was sketched in meticulous, frantic ink. Aris pointed to the halo. Why would biology invest such massive, energy-intensive resources just to suppress a single color? He looked up, his face illuminated by the harsh desk lamp. This is not an accident of evolution. It is a calculated, desperate suppression. He tapped the sketch, his nail leaving a dent in the yellowed parchment. But why? What could possibly be so dangerous that our ancestors had to build an entire sensory system just to hide from it? Aris paced to the window, his gaze fixed on the darkening horizon. Imagine a world before the current atmosphere, he began, his voice tight. A planet not bathed in sunlight, but drenched in a constant, uniform blue glow. He traced a line in the air, his hand trembling slightly. This was not light as we know it. It was a non-electromagnetic force, an ancient radiation that threatened to blind every living thing that dared to open its eyes. He turned back to the assistant, his expression hardening. Early life was not just struggling to find food or shelter. It was struggling to see without being destroyed by the very environment it inhabited. He slammed his hand onto the desk, rattling the emphasis. We are the descendants of the survivors who learned to shut it out. Our eyes are not windows to the world. They are bunkers. He gestured to the retinal scan on the wall. Every receptor, every neural pathway, every filter in our brain was forged in that crucible. We did not evolve to see the truth of the universe. We evolved to survive a blinding, blue-drenched hell. We are living in a state of perpetual biological denial, built to keep the true nature of our origins from burning our minds to ash. Aris stepped away from the window, his movements sharp and restless. He grabbed a heavy stone paperweight from the desk and held it inches from the assistant's face. "Look at the edge," he commanded, his voice dropping to a low, urgent rasp. "Do not look at the stone itself. Look at the boundary where the object meets the air." He watched the assistant squint, then continued. "We see a world of distinct, solid objects, but that is a lie. We are only seeing the gaps in the blue static." He rotated the stone, the light catching its rough surface. Our brains are constantly stitching together the fragments that slip through our filters. The world we know is just the leftover debris, the safe space carved out of a much larger, more violent reality. He set the stone down with a heavy thud. If you stare long enough, if you push your focus past the edges of leaves or stone, you might catch a glimpse of that original, unfiltered blue aura. He leaned in, his eyes wide and unblinking. It is not a malfunction of the eye. It is a remnant of an ancient, desperate struggle. We are not just seeing the world. We are actively filtering it to keep from being overwhelmed by the true blue-drenched universe that still surrounds us. Aris turned back to the window. The laboratory lights flickered and died, leaving the room bathed in the deep, bruised purple of the approaching night. He did not reach for the switch. He stood still, watching the sky transition from gold to a deep, resonant indigo. "Look out there," he whispered, his voice stripped of its earlier intensity, replaced by a hollow, quiet clarity. "The sun is setting, and the blue is bleeding back into the world. We call it twilight, a simple transition of light. But it is the moment our filters work the hardest." He pressed his palm against the cold glass. "We do not just see the world, we construct it, we curate it. Every shape, every color, every boundary is a defensive wall we have built to keep the raw, ancient static from rushing in." He watched a single bird cut across the horizon, a black silhouette against the deepening blue. "We are survivors of a war we have forgotten, living in a reality that is nothing more than a carefully maintained silence. To survive is to filter. To exist is to ignore the truth that lies just beyond the edges of our vision." He stopped. The room was silent. Outside, the sky deepened, and for a moment, the blue seemed to press against the glass, heavy and absolute. He did not look away. He stood as a witness to the boundary, watching the world hold its breath, waiting for the filter to fail.